Silly me, I've been talking while muted. I did start talking maybe about 10 seconds ago, but I don't mind repeating myself and to say that I've been listening to Olson and Chris Howard's stream, and the action was really in the chat, and I was talking to Tiny Tim. He always changes his name, but he's known as Rob because he has a particular set of concerns that he repeats and is noticed. So we were talking about the ortho boneheads and though we didn't explicitly call it as such, the white grievance culture. This is what he talks about. And this includes expression of chauvinism, bigotry, historical ignorance, and racism. He complains about PVK allowing it or encouraging it, um, well, discreetly, of course. I don't think PVK has ever said anything racist, but he will have a go at the Muslims and keep talking about Ayaan Hirsi Ali and um, conflate is Muslims with honor killings. And we had a discussion about whether PVK does it to pander to the beliefs of his online congregation, or whether he genuinely believes in it. And it doesn't matter. I think it's a good thing that PVK is addressing these issues. After all, why am I buzzing around the TLC? My concern is with white people, really. So, and white people have a problem, and they need to sort themselves out for for the good of themselves as well as for the good of the rest of the world, since they are, well, in particular, Americans, voters of a global hegemon. And what I have to tell them is that liberal democracy no longer works. And I'm very relieved that I'm not the only one saying that. This very issue has been aired on Tucker Carlson by Jimmy Dore, who I believe is quite popular amongst dissidents. He's some sort of comedian, isn't he? Though the first time I ever saw him was on Tucker Carlson. And he's some kind of Christian who doesn't believe in going to church. I mean, what can you do with these Christians? All I'm trying to do is explain their own history to them. And of course, okay, I'm not Christian, I'm not American, I'm not white, but I do actually say, and it does annoy quite a few of them, that, I understand white people better than they understand themselves. And the thing is, they can't prove me wrong because my knowledge of English and European culture and the classics and Shakespeare and history in general, particularly church history, is second to none. I mean, it really is. But of course, my problem is that these white people won't accept it from me because, well, I'm not one of them. But Jonah wasn't one of these Ninevites. So, oh yes, my almost second to none knowledge of biblical and Quranic history, as well as the construction of Judaism, I think I'm pretty good on all all these fronts. So for that reason alone, they should hail me as their Jonah, big me up, get me on Tucker Carlson so I can explain what's wrong with the West to the only independent journalist that is generally known with the biggest name. So this is what the TLC could be doing. And of course, individual members of the TLC, if they're getting annoyed at me buzzing around them, they could get PVK to talk to me, to interview me, and then I can move on up. I mean, ideally, I'd like to speak to. Well, I'd like to take in Ann Coulter and um, any of these, white nationalists. I have already spoken to Andrew Wilson, but that was many years ago, and he adopted his usual underhanded tactics, and I didn't mind, but I can't find the video now. But recently, it appeared briefly, and then it disappeared again. So, um, why do they employ these underhanded tactics? I think it's because they actually can't win, and they have to do these adopt these hit and run tactics because they don't feel they can win in a straight fight. But by that I mean a an extended conversation about whatever topic they're having difficulties with. And it's so obvious what's happening. They know that being Christian is more important to them than their afterlife. That's why they keep doing it, because if they literally thought, well, I want to go to the better place in the afterlife, and I do literally believe in the afterlife and the Abrahamic God who will be sending people to the right place, then what must you do? If you really cared about your afterlife, you would think, well, if my if my friends and family shun me because they think I've gone Muslim, um, so be it, because I'm going to the better place, and they're not. If they really thought that, but no, they don't, and that is why they keep. I mean, to be fair to them, they don't they don't ban me from their channel. Um, Although a few of them have, well, not all of them have banned me, but a few of them have, and I think they're adopting the tactic of, sometimes banning me and sometimes not, or just allowing me to make a maximum of comments, and then not allowing me to respond, but you can still see my comments, but I can't respond to anyone challenging me. It is a bit annoying, but um, well, we have to be grateful for small mercies that there is some kind of engagement taking place. And this is what I urge these people claiming to believe in God to note, which is that belief in the afterlife is about deferred gratification. And this means that you are to put aside these worldly concerns, such as who am I going to hang out with? And who will shun me if I show any signs of wanting to to have a different religion that isn't associated with being white. So that is really the main problem. And I'm not saying they're all racist. There's a lot of unacknowledged racism, but then a lot of their problems can be identified through their race, because white people, whether you like them or not, they are the ones who've been marinating in the morass of feminism, of matriarchy. So um, that's just a fact, and they can't take it, and it's all because of their history, which they don't quite understand. And I do want to explain it to them, but they're not taking it from me because I'm not one of them. But I think the fact that I'm not one of them gives me a clearer perspective on what has happened to them. And the fact that I am obviously the world's greatest expert on white people and their history and their culture. And they don't want to hear it from me. But apart from being the expert on white people and Christianity, what else am I an expert on? I am also an expert on theology, and I do understand how it all works in the five world religions. But my specialization is in the Abrahamic religions because they are organized religion, and organized religions are better at imperialism than the non-organized religions. And and this means that for white people, it would be utterly foolish of them to adopt paganism because it's like, oh, let's turn back time to before Christianity. And well, that would be a sad thing, right? I know a few of them, they've been to Rome and, oh, look at the wonderful ancient buildings of Rome and Roman architecture and the Pantheon and all that kind of thing. But, it is actually unproductive to wish for a time machine, to go back to what you think of as the golden age. But when you go back in time, what's happening is that you are rejecting the present, and well, a lot of your own history, you're rejecting it, and you're deliberately throwing away all these um you're deliberately throwing away all the history that you could be learning from, but which you refuse to do so because you're angry and sentimental um and not particularly wanting to learn from your history. What do I most want to inform them about? I'm saying that it would be the easiest thing to put themselves in a hypothetical situation of being utterly orphaned and friendless, but having a country to run and having to make the choice of the best religion. Which religion would you choose from if you wanted to run your country properly? And I'm saying it must be Islam, right? It must be Islam. It can't be Christianity because of all the problems it has had, with the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, the wars of the Reformation, the failure of Christianity to defend the divine right of kings, the end of Christendom in 1918, its failure to defend absolute monarchy. It's all gone. It's failed. It failed absolute monarchs. Peasants. So what do you think it's going to do to you, peasant? And I'm saying the only way to hold your rulers accountable is to have a rule book. You know, and I've used this analogy of playing Monopoly. You have this board game, um, you want to play it. Some of these board games have quite complicated rules, so you need to know what the rules are in order to win the game. So you need a rule book. And I'm saying the Quran is this rule book. You have been, as Heidegger said, thrown into this world without being consulted, and you have to work out what it is you have to do. And I'm saying get a rule book. So you know how to play this game that you never wanted to play, but are nevertheless asked, expected to play it. You never asked to be born, and you were born. And Never having been born, you have been informed that you have an immortal soul that will go to a to the better or worse place depending on your ability to show that you know the difference between good and evil in theory and in practice. That's all we have to do. This is the purpose of our lives. If you if you want if you want to be if you want to be protected from the fear of death and injustice and suffering, and if you do suffer, you will at least understand that your suffering is either a test to see if you are worthy of something better than what you already have, or it is punishment for some sin that you need to make inquiries about. And obviously, how gracefully you put up with suffering is a test. So it's all easy to understand, and if you're determined to reject the possibility of an afterlife, you could at least you could at least understand that even if God does not exist to punish anyone for anything, the narrative of eternal life and eternal bliss and perfect justice is irresistible to many. And so all you need to do is get the government to promote this belief, and people will fall into line. So political activism has to be about promoting this belief and asking each other and eventually our ruling classes why we can't have this. I just don't see what the problem is. Um, we don't quite live in a Mad Max society. Plenty of us still have friends and family, and we can host dinner parties at which we could be asking our dinner guests what they think is the nature and purpose of religion and whether Christianity is serving its purpose. What is the problem? Hello, Tiny. Sorry, I've been going on and I haven't even posted the link. Well, I hope you'll join. And Tiny Tim Tom says the oligarchs know they will accept peasantry as long as there is a caste beneath them to aim their hatred. Well, I'm actually thinking that the oligarchs might want to feel good about themselves, and and I'm thinking they can be divided and ruled because they're not all evil, are they? I mean, some of them just think, well, well, they haven't been presented with secular Quranism, and I'm saying, well, least TLC can do is help me get on Tucker Carlson or Ann Coulter and all the white nationalist types. I don't need to speak to Andrew Wilson again, and I certainly don't want to speak to Jim Bob and all the ortho boneheads. But I think it would still be worthwhile talking to PVK, to Ann Coulter, though, obviously she is an Islamophobe, but she's legally trained, and that's what I like about her, and I've always kind of liked her anyway. And and of course, Tucker Carlson. And I don't think I'm that far away from it. That is the thing. We are libertine and not liberal, you say. So you're talking about, are you talking about the peasants? It doesn't matter. I mean, we're all, I guess, you know, if we're not morally perfect, then I mean, I would actually say most Westerners, or the overwhelming majority of Westerners, are sex offenders, because fornication is a mortal sin, isn't it? That's what it is. But the whole point of the Abrahamic moral system is that redemption is possible. You just have to say you're sorry, and it's kind of I'm reminded of childhood. When you've been naughty and your parents they offer you the option of forgiveness. So you have to say you're sorry for whatever it was you said and did, and everything will be all right again. And this is what redemption and penitence is all about. And do I really need to belabor that point? I'm saying the system is easy. It's easy to understand and easy to explain. And what's gone wrong with white people is their idolatry, and they can't deny it. And actually, the fact that people like Olson and Brett and Scott are obviously having the heebie-jeebies about talking to me is in a way helpful. Obviously, that they're reacting in a way that shows that they're minded to reject my entire narrative. But the thing is, they haven't got anything better. This is their problem. They want to reject what I offer them, but they can only rationally, honestly reject it if they've got something better, and they haven't. So all they do, we just like what Elson does is they read the Bible, and I guess it has some kind of, you know, comfort. They hear their own voice. They're reminded of themselves, their identity, their own voices, their scripture, and it doesn't really mean anything, but it's a kind of self-comforting. It's like a comfort blanket, and I don't want to crash their party, really. I mean, I think I've been, I do show some restraint. I do understand, there are times when they just want to be in their echo chambers and their hug boxes, and they don't want me crashing in and asking my annoying questions. But at the end of the day, somebody has to ask these questions. Tim Tom says PVK is trying to spin the origins of liberalism when in fact it came before Christianity, from the Greeks to the Muslims before the West. Well, okay, I sort of understand what you're trying to say. I mean, you could say um, democracy is liberalism, and now we have the term liberal democracy and liberal Democrats. And of course, we all want liberty, and I guess anyone who's ever come across a law they don't like will regard it as tyrannical and oppressive, and because they can't see the point of it. And of course, we would all instinctively want to free ourselves from the oppression of this unnecessarily oppressive and tyrannical and totalitarian law. But I'm saying liberalism, taken to its logical conclusion, would mean that we all have the liberty to do anything we like, and if we do that, we will be back in the law of the jungle, and therefore not particularly free unless we are very powerful, and even the powerful grow old and die. And we want to live the good life, and we can't live a good life in the jungle where the strong eat the weak. So we would like all these comforting words are just justice, peace, order, progress, the rule of law, all these, comforting words that mean living in a high trust and low crime and low tax, hopefully, and low tax society, free of war, invasion, revolution, and that sort of thing. And that's what we all want, all of us, whatever our race, and we need a rule system, and God, if He exists, has helpfully provided us with the Quran. And anyone who continues to reject that is obviously an Islamophobe because you haven't got anything better, Olson, Scott, and Brett. You haven't got anything better. All you can do is sort of say, oh, our religion doesn't. We're not. It's not meant to give us anything. We don't expect Christianity to give us a better life. Then what the hell point is it then, if it doesn't in some way make you feel better about yourselves or in some way improve your life? What is the point of having a religion that doesn't even improve your life or give you a sense of community? So I'm afraid they might be intelligent men, but they are going down the wrong path. So for my purpose, I will have to say that liberalism. Yeah, okay, I'm a student of modern history. I do understand that, since time immemorial, there were lots of people who did want to be liberated from all the rules that they felt they had to follow. But liberalism, um, as it relates to 21st century Western man, can't go back too far back. We're talking about liberalism as, a distinct secular political ideology, and this came from America, just because of the way the Declaration of Independence is worded. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this generated the French Revolution when the French revolutionaries demanded this laundry list of equality, liberty, and fraternity. And what they really meant was liberation from the oppression of absolute monarchy. And we just need to confine it, to modern times. Um, and we need to, understand how monarchy came to a halt in 1918. And I just want to confine the syllabus to this narrow, well, not it's not even that narrow, but to this period of time, so it becomes more manageable and understandable. And particularly if you're American, because it just infuriates me that Americans don't even understand their own history. And when I go on about the separation of church and state, they obviously don't get it, because they're still joining the Orthodox Church. They're still saying mean things about the church of their parents and their ancestors, like it was going to make any difference. The point is, whatever whatever your religion in America, and you go to Congress or somebody in Congress, and you say you want the law has to be changed because your religious book says there ought to be a law against this, or that there ought to be a law compelling this thing. Congress will tell you to get lost, because of the First Amendment forbidding the establishment of any religion. So you have to, well, forget all about that and just concentrate on secular Quranism, which is not a religion. It's only a legal system. It can't be a religion because its creator is not Muslim, and, and is agnostic. So, so these are the really important things to understand about secular Quranism. It will allow its particular characteristics, its unique characteristics will allow it to be incorporated into the legal system of America um, by insisting that it is not a religion. And and it falls back into the White House Koran, which belonged to Thomas Jefferson, who drafted the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, which later became the First Amendment, which was at one time the envy of the world, certainly of the old world, who never heard of such a thing, did they? In Christendom, with subjects who lived under absolute monarchs who made them follow the religion of the monarch. How oppressive is that? Not even having the right to your opinion. So this is essential Western history that all Christians must understand, particularly those who are sentimental about kings. And of course, I have to address the issue with regard to any monarchy in Europe. Fortunately, there aren't that many left. There's of course the British monarchy, which is the most powerful one in the world because it controls the most territory, and there's the Swedish, the Norwegian, the Spanish, and the Belgian monarchies. But they are but remnants and really have no power. And so it is important to understand the difference between monarchy and republic. And I'm afraid not even Muslims understand it. And you think they, of all people, they should understand the difference between monarchy and republic. But we know that the Gulf kingdoms are, well, the Gulf states are Gulf kingdoms. And the Gulf kingdoms are absolute monarchies. And the reason why Iran has done so well is because it is closest to the way um, Sharia ought to be interpreted. Because they're doing it properly, or they're trying to do it properly. These Iranians in their republic and their supreme leader with a proper hierarchy and a transparent political system. In that they're all these different institutions and are supposed to apply the rule of law according to Sharia. And we know that Iran has done very well for itself, considering how small it is. It has got itself to defy the might of America. And so Americans and other Westerners are invited to think of how they could restore the patriarchy and make their country run under a semblance of facts and logic again. Because currently the West is a matriarchy, and being a matriarchy, um, it would be a society of unmarried parents and their illegitimate offspring, and this means that immoral men and immoral women who do not support marriage will be top of the tree, encouraging um, gay marriage and transgenderism, which is, of course, uh, harmful to the demographics of white people. And it's really quite easy to shame these people who refuse to support marriage. Very easy. So I'd like to be able to explain this to people. So I know Tom Holland wants to have his cake and eat it. He wants to say, ain't liberalism wonderful? Ain't Christianity wonderful? And I'm saying you're conflating the two when one is obviously a reaction against the other. Because if Christianity were properly were still in existence and firing on all four cylinders, then you would get a majority of people who are married parents and legitimate offspring. And obviously that isn't the case, because the best thing that Christianity did for Europeans was to enforce monogamy. And we know how fiercely monogamous Christianity was, because, well, you only have to look at Henry VIII to understand that Christianity was so strict about monogamy that it wouldn't even allow Catholics to get a divorce. They would have to pretend that the marriage never took place. And then they would, get them, and they would get their knickers in a twist about whether the children that they had under the marriage that they thought they had before it was annulled, did it make their children illegitimate? I actually don't know how they managed to settle it, because I think that point must have been raised, back. Um, um, well, the thing is, that Henry's first wife, Catherine of Aragon, was divorced. So under the Church of England. So basically, you could say that Henry VIII, kind of adopted this Muslim idea that divorce was a human right that he was availing himself of. But if he had already been Muslim, Henry VIII would have been allowed to take up to four wives, and he got his son finally through his third wife, Jane Seymour. His fourth wife was a disaster. It was Anne of Cleves, wasn't it? And then the next one was another Catherine, whom he had beheaded, and then he had another Catherine um, who was okay in the end, and she kept her head. How shocking! How shocking, Tiny Tim Tom, that Brett blocked you after one comment about Normans slaughtering Byzantines. Why do you think he did that? It doesn't sound to be, particularly offensive to me. TLC is a PVK cult of personality. I wouldn't disagree about that. Echo chamber for bigots. I mean, okay. I guess you would expect them to want to be Christian or remain Christian, but you would also expect them to be reasonable, right? You'd expect them to be reasonable and understand arguments when you put it to them. And, sadly, even though some of them are clearly educated and have been to grad school, they're just not able to do it, which suggests that they are inwardly corrupt. I mean, if you allow your hatred to prevent you from seeing facts and logic, you are, in fact, doing yourself a disservice. And of course, being middle class are not going to admit their anti Semitism, their racism, and their Islamophobia. Okay, seven liberal arts was Greek. Okay, what were the seven liberal arts then? Can you name them? Okay, I get it about America being built on on Masonic lodges. Oh, I'm surprised at you, Dr. Mengele, saying Muslims need to unite and take on Zionism. Well, I was just telling my Khalid, whose channel is called Helpful Ahmadi. I have to point out to him that Zionism is okay. Let me start again. There is an article in the Tablet magazine, which is a Jewish publication, saying that Allah is Zionist because of chapter 17, verse 104, which says that Jews have a right to live in Israel, in the promised land, but sharing the land with Gentiles. And I'm saying it could be used as by Muslims to say, oh, well, we Muslims, we're Zionists too. We're not saying Jews can't live in Israel, but they can only live in Israel and in peace if they live under Sharia. They could say that, couldn't they? But they don't. I've been telling them for years and years and years that they could be saying that and making that point, but they're a bit stupid, right? Or they're too triggered by the hatred of Jews that they can't even, bring themselves to say the word Zionism without, their heads exploding. Oh, so Brett said before he threatened to block you. Okay. Well, it's sad. It's sad that educated men can't deal with facts and logic, and they have to retreat into their echo chamber to feel safe. And I mean, this is not a way to live. Particularly if you're educated. So I'm talking about. I'm sure. I'm sure Brett went to university. I can't remember what course he did, but he's not stupid. I know he was an A for a bit, and I know he would like to retire to a monastery if the option were available. And I guess he's not really, up to, making any. Well, he's not up to becoming a political activist, and neither is Scott, and neither is Olson. But then Olson has no leadership skills, right? And but he's not stupid either. He used to teach, economics, and he was a science teacher. But I guess his mindset, his fixation on wanting Christianity to be true, has, utterly destroyed his ability to think clearly. Yes, thank you for saying trivium and quadrivium, because I have actually had heard of that. So obviously, 4 plus 7 mean equals seven, seven liberal subjects, as you were saying. Thank you for making that clear to me. Trivium was grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Yes, I do remember that. Quadrivium is arithmetic. You see, but that's not liberal. That's STEM, isn't it? Arithmetic, geometry, music, astronomy, and I think it's theology. Oh, you've got four already. No, quadrivium. It has to include theology. Let me look it up. Because I did once look it up. So where's theology then? I'm sure I read theology was one of the trivium or quadrivium. Um, okay, well, maybe I was mistaken, but I thought theology was included. Never mind. I mean, I suppose theology would be included um, if your group believes in, any, if your group has a system of belief, and I suppose that, if your group does have a system of belief, you ought to acquaint yourself with it, be it communism or liberalism or nationalism. Well, I do know that Judaism is not a single ethnicity because they're obliged to accept converts. So, and I also know that, Jews, they divide themselves into um, Ashkenazim, Mithrakim, and Sephardim. So, we already know that, in different parts of the world, there are different kinds of Jews coming from different traditions, and they can sometimes be a bit racist towards each other. Okay, we're coming to the end of the comments, and I have to sum up why Christians need to, well, they need to examine their consciences, right? If all you care about is hanging out with, other white middle class people, then these concerns are, well, they're hardly to do with the afterlife and pleasing and obeying God, are they? It's about, very worldly concerns about hanging out with, with the people you think are the cool gang. So you may not have your priorities right. That this is all I'm saying. Yes, I understand it's hard to, think of yourselves as hanging out with brown people in their mosques, but I'm not asking you to do that either. I have offered you the antechamber, the bridge of secular Quranism, and you could be, hanging out in your cool white groups or post-Christian groups and talking about secular Quranism and wondering if you could, well, keep going to your church as you support secular Quranism. And of course, the answer is yes. And this is the point I seek to make to PVK, because I think that there are lots of people who still must misunderstand the nature and purpose of secular Quranism. They will, insist that I'm some kind of Muslim and I want to convert them to Islam. And if they don't convert to Islam, I'm going to behead them, or just some stupid crap like that. And I'm saying, no, secular Quranism is for social conservatives. You can be Buddhist, you can be atheist and agnostic and Hindu and Christian and Jewish, and you can say, um, well, I mean, you will be able to go to your usual place of religious worship. It's just that you have to obey the law of the land, and the law of the land requires you to jointly apply for a marriage license and be granted it before you can have children said to be legitimate. That is really it. It's a very um, reasonable requirement if you want to prevent the further degeneracy of the West. What is the problem? There's no. I don't think that you, that anybody has an arguable point. They just don't want to do it, or they don't want to be seen to be the first to do it. They don't want to be the one, considering it. So they all have to huddle together and, throw throw stones at me to sort of feel white and Christian or something. That's what they feel they have to do, and it's really quite childish. I really am trying to help them, and I think what I'm proposing is reasonable, and I am confident in being able to argue that the founding fathers would approve of what I'm doing and would be saying this is exactly the thing they would do if they were still alive today to fortify their constitutional republic